Hello everyone, class is in session. My name is Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to look at Raw Graded. Was tonight's Raw a good show? Was it a bad show? I guess we'll find out. And if you watched it, you'll have your own opinions. If you didn't watch it, don't worry. I'll be your spirit guide and also literal guide through the world of Monday Night Raw this week. Just before we begin, I apologise on behalf of my own facial hair. I will get a chance to shave in the near future, I promise. But just before we begin, Sam, if you could give my facial hair the appropriate grade, I'm thinking a D-, maybe even an E. So we start things off with the opening segment. Actually, no, before the opening segment, we had a sort of spooky voice recap, like last time on Monday Night Raw, Bobby Lashley and Roman Reigns. It was very odd indeed. But then we moved on swiftly into the opening segment. It was started by the big dog, Roman Reigns, who came out and obviously was showered with booze and stuff. But it was more of a, it seemed to me to be a little bit more of a split crowd, I guess, kind of. There were a few cheers for Roman peppered throughout the night, and spoiler alert, it was a very Roman-heavy night. So Roman kicked off the show by grabbing the mic and addressing last week's loss to the Revival. He and Lashley lost to the Revival because they couldn't work as a team. The first words that came out of Roman Reigns' mouth, or one of the first sentences that came out of Reigns' mouth, was, "I never thought in my life, in my career, that I'd say these words, but I lost to the Revival." Wow! Way to get Raw off to a hot start, Roman, by dissing one of my favourite tag teams. One of my faves. I'm already hyped up, and it's due to righteous anger because Roman dissed bloody Dash and Dawson. He then said the only reason he lost was because his tag partner was Bobby Lashley, the worst tag team partner in the world. Really, Roman? Bobby Lashley, the worst tag team partner in the world. This is coming from a man who once tag teamed and won title belts as well, tag titles, with Seth Rollins, a man who stabbed him in the back and then later on would go on to rob him of his moment in the sun at the main event of WrestleMania 31. I think Rollins may be a little bit of a worse tag partner than Bobby Lashley. I don't know. It's up for debate. It's a matter of opinion, in the words of Tenacious D. It's worth pointing out as well that Roman keeps referring to Lashley as Bob because he's cool and he does things that other superstars don't, you know? But he's just that guy next door. But the guy next door has a big yard and it's his yard and he runs it. And he's also the dog in the yard. He's the big dog. So he keeps calling Lashley Bob. And then Ziggler and McIntyre came out and beat him down a little bit because there's two of them, but Roman was kind of holding his own, but not really because there's two of them. And then Rollins came out and made the save. Then Roman and Rollins went backstage, found Kurt Angle, and Rollins went, "Look, this ends tonight. We want a match with Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler right now." And Kurt went, "You know what? You can have it next week." And then Roman went, "Nah, we want it tonight, son." And then Angle went, "Yeah, all right, you can have it tonight." And we're meant to believe that Roman is being oppressed by the regime in WWE. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The segment's over, and it got Raw off to a hot, a lukewarm start. Not the best opening segment. I'm going to give this a D+, which is really harsh because obviously Roman delivered his promo fine. It's not his fault. It's just the way he's written is so infuriating. Especially the big minus point for me in this opening segment was the fact that he buried the Revival. He went, "I can't believe I lost to them. They were one of the most effective tag teams in NXT history. Like, you've got to put them over in some way. I know it was just a lucky roll-up and it was because of Lashley, but don't just go, well, they're still crap though, aren't they?" Like, it really got to me. And that's why I've given it such a low grade. But, you know, Roman delivered it fine. I also didn't like the bit afterwards where Rollins was kind of shown to be less influential than Reigns backstage because Rollins is a former Intercontinental Champion and has only just lost the belt and has been putting in excellent performance after excellent performance, whereas Reigns has just tried to disrupt the show and been a bit of a whining whiner. Next up, our first match of the evening, Curtis Axel versus Matt Hardy, which we did see last week. The only difference here was that Bray Wyatt wasn't present because he was involved in a car crash over the weekend, but apparently he's been removed, he's been discharged from hospital and he should be fine, so best wishes to Bray Wyatt. But yeah, this match suffered for me because we'd just seen it last week, and last week's match was about a third as long as this one, but I don't know if that's for better or worse because it was a little bit slow, a little bit sloppy in parts, but at the same time I enjoyed the fact that Curtis Axel got the win. I also enjoyed the fact that when Axel grabbed Hardy, turned to face the hard cam, went, "Ugh!" and then hit him with a move, no one realised it was his finisher because he hits it so infrequently. I'm going to give this a C-. It was alright, you know, it was fine. It was a little bit slow, as I say, but I enjoy the fact that Curtis Axel picked up a cleaner win than last week, throwing a little bit of doubt on the title match at Extreme Rules. Who's going to win? I legitimately don't know. I still think Matt and Bray will probably win, but I honestly don't know. So C- seems fair to me. Now it's time to talk about Bayley's counselling. This was split into two segments over the course of the show, but I'm just going to talk about both of them right now. Basically, despite superstars being mean to each other and jumping each other and, you know, doing horrible things to each other all the time because it's professional wrestling and that's the very lifeblood of storylines and that sort of thing, Bayley was sent to counselling last week by Kurt Angle for attacking Sasha Banks after Sasha had wronged her on a sort of fortnightly basis for the past 6 months or maybe even longer. So it was a little bit frustrating to see Bayley treated like a child yet again. But she turned up at counselling and guess who's there? Oh, it's Sasha Banks. She's also been sent to counselling as well because Kurt's just an idiot. He scheduled them both for a 10 o'clock and they both got there and went into the room and it was Dr. Shelby, hooray. I like Dr. Shelby as much as the next person, okay? I love the Team Hell No stuff, but that worked because they were primarily a comedic pair of wrestlers at the time. They were a comedic tag team. They were sort of, yeah, Daniel Bryan and Kane both have very serious moments, but at that stage of their careers, at that moment in those few months, they were very funny and it worked. I don't think it worked for Bayley and Sasha because they're not at a funny stage. They should be taking this very seriously. They shouldn't be cracking jokes at each other in front of Dr. Shelby. They should be like just waging war on each other like any other superstar would on the roster. In the next segment, Shelby asked them to do impersonations of each other and Sasha Banks was like, I'm Bayley, act like a 5-year-old, I love hugs, yeah. That thing. And then Sasha went, now it's your turn, and Bayley got up and she was like, I'm legit, but actually Bayley had a good line in this. She had the one bit that made me chuckle. She said, I'm Sasha Banks. My mailman's cousin is sort of related to Snoop Dogg. I was like, yes, that's very good, Bayley. Shooting, good. I quite like that. But overall, however, I didn't find these segments to be beneficial to the feud at all, really. And as much as I like the return of Dr. Shelby, I'm a little bit annoyed with how it's all panning out for both Bayley and Sasha, to be fair, but mainly for Bayley. For that reason, I'm going to give it a D-, and I've realised that Raw has really not got off to a good start. I mean, I don't know if I'm just being a little bit harsh with my grades or whether it was a genuinely quite disappointing start to the show. Let me know what you think. We'll wait for my overall grade, but let me know if you think I've been a little bit harsh this week. Next up, the Authors of Pain versus Titus Worldwide, and basically the Authors of Pain like squashed them essentially. The Titus Worldwide got a little bit of offense in towards the start, but the Authors of Pain just sort of turned it on and beat them in about 2 or 3 minutes. Last week I predicted that Titus was going to get ripped limb from limb by the Authors of Pain, but it was actually Apollo Crews who got ripped limb from limb, which makes less sense to me because, you know, he's, you know, younger and fresher, but, you know, gets a C, straight down the middle. Pretty entertaining squash match, but nothing to write home about. Next up, the first of 2 tag team matches featuring Roman Reigns. He was pulling double duty, yo. Oh, what am I thinking saying that? Roman obviously took part in this match with Rollins against Drew and Dolph Ziggler, and then would later on go on to face the Revival alongside Bobby Lashley in another match between those 2 teams. Yeah, it was quite a good match, to be fair. Seth Rollins continued his excellent performances over the past few months, but at the same time, the ending was a little bit deflating, but it did kind of make sense too. Rollins spent the majority of the match playing the babyface in peril, sometimes getting a little surge of momentum, hitting a few moves, and then being beaten down yet again. And he did it really well. No one really does that better than Rollins, and no one really cuts off the momentum of the babyfaces better than the Revival. It wasn't even the Revival, it was Drew and Dolph. I'm saying the Revival because they got involved for the finish. Rollins was eventually able to make the tag, but he almost sort of made it, and then Reigns got pulled off the apron by the Revival. Bang, 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 they all beat down the babyfaces, and both sets of heel teams hit their finishes on a respective babyface. It was all decent stuff. I wouldn't have been happy if this was a pay-per-view match, obviously, but it was perfectly fine for TV. Even the screwy finish was okay. So I'm giving it, overall, a lovely B. Good job, everyone, and especially for Seth Rollins. Next up, Constable Corbin hit the ring and basically called out Finn Balor for being a rubbish tag team partner because the other week they tagged together, but they couldn't get on and they bickered and stuff, and it was largely Corbin's fault. He rolled the footage back, he slapped Balor in the back of the head to tag in. Balor obviously was furious and kicked him, and Corbin played that off this week as like, obviously Balor was exhausted, I tagged myself in, even though Balor was firing up in the corner. I found that pretty funny. I'm finding Corbin pretty funny since he's like shaved his head and become Stephanie's, like, you know, eyes and ears on Monday Night Raw. But then Balor came out, and again, like I said with Roman Reigns in the opening segment, it's not his fault. You know, he delivered it all fine, but the script for me was not a very good. It was full of like lame WWE babyface humor. So Balor was like, I've got a few apologies to make to you, Baron, because Baron had gone, I'm sorry for being bigger and tougher and stronger than you, which was a little bit big cast for my liking. But anyway, Balor was like, I've got a few apologies too. I'm sorry that what I said last week about your jacket made you get fired from TGI Fridays. Oh, I'm British. We have TGI Fridays here, but the waiters don't, I think, wear waistcoat. Is that what they do in America? Do they wear waistcoats at TGI Fridays? I don't understand the joke because obviously he knows that Baron Corbin has 2 jobs now. He's a WWE superstar first and foremost, and he's also Stephanie McMahon's constable on Raw. I don't understand the joke. Does he think that Corbin's also working at TGI Fridays on the road? I don't understand what you were doing, Finn. I don't get what... Then his second joke, before I get too lost in that, was I also apologise, or you deserve an apology for the guy who gave you that haircut, or despite sort of the general consensus being online that Baron looks far, far better with his head shaved than he did with his long hair. So I don't know what he was going for there. I'm giving this segment a C+ because I find Corbin is like really in the perfect role for himself right now, but equally at the same time, I feel like Balor is absolutely not in the correct role for him right now. He was always best on the indies as either a really beloved but serious and cool action hero style babyface, or in New Japan as just a dirty, dastardly, horrible heel. He was the leader of the Bullet Club, man. He was the original leader of the coolest stable in wrestling, and now he's coming out and cracking these awful jokes and smiling a lot. Anyway, the pair fought, and Corbin lost the exchange because Balor's more handsome, or whatever. Next up, Ember Moon versus Liv Morgan, who came out with Sarah Logan. They were without Ruby Riott because she sadly sustained a knee injury over the weekend. Hopefully she's okay. But yeah, so right, essentially what happened here was, this is probably the best Liv Morgan singles match I've ever seen. Obviously she's still quite inexperienced and stuff, and we can forgive her for having slightly sloppy or slow matches. This match wasn't perfect, but it was all right. It served a purpose, and I think this really showed how good Ember Moon is. Credit to Ember Moon for kind of helping and guiding Liv Morgan through the match and making it an alright one. Like, not a brilliant match, you know, not a very good match, but a decent one, a passable one. It was actually, you know, alright, and Liv Morgan can obviously have good tag team matches and stuff when there's loads of people around her, so she's only got a reduced role. But in a singles match, I was kind of worried for her, and she did exceed my expectations. Ember Moon obviously hit the Eclipse and picked up the pinfall, and Liv Morgan's sell on the Eclipse as well was actually like spot on. Loved it. Really, really nice sell on the Eclipse. So after that very patronising rundown of the match, I'm really sorry, Liv Morgan fans. I think she's great. I've taken a bit of a patronising tone there, and I'm sorry. But I was impressed with both her and especially with Ember Moon. So I'm going to give it a C+. No, the sell of the Eclipse not like nudges this up. Give it a B- instead, please, Sam. A B-, because that Eclipse sell was actually spot on. Find a gif of it online. Next up, the second Roman Reigns tag team match of the night. Roman Reigns and Bob versus the Revival. I'm just going to read my notes here for this match to give you a sort of general sense of what the match was like and the feeling I got from it. Reigns is so brave. He's already been in one match. He stays out for really long. He's being so brave. Refuses to tag out to Lashley, refuses to tag out to Lashley, refuses to tag out to Lashley. Eventually, Lashley just comes in illegally and cleans house. The Revival continue to batter Roman, ignore the referee's count, and get DQ'd. Lashley walks off, and the Revival hit Roman with the Shatter Machine. And then in capital letters, what? Exclamation mark, question mark. The reason I'm so confused there is because the Revival just blew it. Absolutely blew it, lads. I'm gonna give this a D, right? First of all, I get it. Roman Reigns staying in the ring and trying to be the man and refusing to tag in his partner is the most Roman Reigns thing. It is perfect character work. I enjoyed that. Like, I did enjoy that. Whether it was meant to get heat or not, I thought it worked really well with who Roman Reigns is. But at the same time, the booking really, really annoyed me here. Why would the Revival, like, knowing, right, let's break it down like this. The Revival are one of the most intelligent tag teams in WWE history, and we've been told that over the course of like a few years now. The Revival are now in the ring against two larger men, but they identify the team on getting on that they're facing, and that one of them is just refusing to tag out to his partner. Why would they then get themselves DQ'd? They've got an excellent chance of winning the match. Win the match, lads. Win the match. This gets a D. It was a decent match, but the booking's just really... I'm getting a bit warm. Next up, Mojo Rowley versus No Way Jose. Again, this match didn't happen because Mojo Rowley just got on the mic beforehand, called out Jose and said, look, you're not, I don't need to wrestle you, you're nothing to me. Then again, he beat up a member of the conga line, beat up No Way Jose a little bit, and then slammed him on the apron and walked to the back. This was very, very similar to last week, like very similar. Down to the point where, like, even the guy he attacked in the conga line was wearing a cheeseburger like the guy last week. It was... ah, man. Like, last week I thought it was okay. This week, because they have just repeated it essentially note for note again, I'm going to give it a D, and I'm sorry, guys. It sounds harsh again. Again, let me know in the comments if I'm being too harsh this week, but it really just didn't appeal to me at all. We've seen it all before. Next up, we've got a Mickie James singles match, which is a little bit rare, but I always enjoy that. Love Mickie James, of course. She was one of the best women's wrestlers of a time when women's wrestling wasn't afforded the respect it totally deserved. Now, this was decent stuff. It was Mickie James versus Nia Jax. Natalya was in Nia's corner, Alexa Bliss was in Mickey's corner, and the babyface picked up the win because Alexa was distracting the referee. Natalya ran around the ring to even the odds. Standard sort of wrestling wrestling storytelling, and Nia was able to hit the Samoan drop and pick up the victory. B-, totally, you know, straightforward, fine, it's all good. The most interesting thing, however, for me came before the match when we had a little interview with Ronda Rousey and she said, I may be suspended, but I've bought a ticket for Extreme Rules. She's gonna be there. This is legitimately, I sounded a bit sarcastic there, but it's actually an exciting prospect for me. I'm keen to see how she gets involved and how her appearance there has a bearing on the match. Lovely, lovely, mysterious stuff. And finally, the main event, Kevin Owens versus Braun Strowman. So Kevin Owens earlier in the night arrived at the arena terrified because of what Strowman did to him last week when he flipped his car. He refused to give his car keys to the valet, which I totally understand. That's not a heel move in my opinion, that's just being clever. He then tried to leave because, well, he made a complaint to Kurt first of all, and Kurt went, it sounds like you need a match against Braun Strowman. Kurt's just put Bayley into anger management counselling for throwing a few punches at her friend who's been horrible to her on a consistent basis. Kevin Owens gets his car flipped by Braun Strowman, and Kurt Angle goes, well, I think I'm going to put you in a match with him. Oh, I hurt my finger, that was a hard bite. So the match goes like this, the pair of them lock up, Owens gets obviously shoved to the canvas and he just rolls out and just walks away and takes the count out loss. Then Braun goes after him and chases him backstage again, just like he did last week. And I'm still at this point not certain what Owens has done wrong to Strowman, apart from lose to him at Money in the Bank in that big multi-man Money in the Bank ladder match, and also try to apologise to him the next week. I don't know what Owens has done wrong, but he chased him to the back. Owens tried to hide. He was like, oh, where's my car? His car. He couldn't find his car keys, couldn't get into his car. Found like a porta potty, as the Americans call it. We call it portaloos, or porta cabins. Maybe that's a transatlantic one. But he got inside the portaloo, porta potty, and hid. Strowman came out the back and went, where's Kevin Owens? And credit to the valet who saw this all happen. He is not a grass. If I want him on my team on the streets if we're like robbing a bank or something, because he did not snitch at all. Strowman was like, where is he? And the guy just went, and just ran away. That's my boy. My boy, you're the real big dog. But Strowman somehow sensed that Owens was in the porta potty. He duct taped it together, dragged it back all the way back to the arena, up onto the stage. There was a convenient little ramp there, which is fair enough, and then just pushed off the stage. It looked like it was a nasty fall. I don't know if Owens was actually inside it or if it was a bit of smoke and mirrors. Whoa, only smoke and mirrors. Whoa. Then, you know, like officials opened it and Owens came out covered in blue goop and he was like, ah, look at it, stupid Kevin. This gets an E. I really didn't enjoy it. Kevin Owens deserves so much more and Strowman deserves more as well. The second he won the Money in the Bank briefcase, he became this wacky bully. He's been a bully. This is no different from Ryback's bully heel run, except we're meant to cheer for him instead. E is the fair mark, the fair grade, in my opinion. So, time for the overall Raw grade. And again, let me know if this is harsh, but I'm going to give it a D this week because, like, there was some good matches. Mainly the two women's singles matches were okay. Ember versus Liv Morgan and Mickie James versus Nia Jax. I also enjoyed Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins versus Drew and Ziggler. But apart from that, everything on the show was kind of either lackluster or like actively bad. And again, it's not the fault of the wrestlers so much as the booking, because I'm just going to break it down, right? Here's a little analogy. Are any of you familiar with the Legend of Zelda games? Because in the Legend of Zelda games, it doesn't follow like, you know, Gears of War 1, Gears of War 2. The story doesn't follow on from the previous game. Instead, every Legend of Zelda story is its own little story, but all of the tropes are the same. So the hero's Link, the princess is Zelda, Ganondorf's or Ganon's like the villain or whatever. Every little trope is the same, but it's all told in a slightly different way. It's like giving 10 artists the same picture and saying, draw that picture now, replicate it, or draw that item, and they'd all draw it in a slightly different way. That's how I feel Raw's being booked. It's meant to be an episodic thing. It's meant to be like Gears of War, but it's like Zelda. It's like in between pay-per-views, they give it to like a team of writers. They go, right, we've got 4 weeks between pay-per-views. Can you all just write the same thing to link it together and just do it in your own way? Because nothing seems to follow on. We could tell these stories, we could have these episodes in any order between pay-per-views, and it wouldn't make too much of a difference. It's really baffling to me. And yes, WWE have been guilty of this for quite a while now, but it's become very apparent since Money in the Bank. In terms of wrestling quality, right, WWE could arguably be better than they've ever been before because of the wealth of talent on their roster, but in terms of booking, just sort it out. And to be honest, this doesn't apply to SmackDown as much as it does Raw, but Raw, sort it, mate. Sort it. So that's it for this week's Graded. Maybe the angriest Graded I've ever done. And I'm really sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that in this classroom. I'll try and be calmer next week. But thank you very much for watching. My name has been Jack from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter at JackTheJobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic. And if you want to as well, you can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget to hit subscribe and to join us.